There's snow on the mountains, the wind's blowing. We're setting up our rods. It's cold, but I couldn't be happier. As I get older, I find it harder to say no to things. It seems sometimes and feels sometimes like the fishing seasons for me are rolling round far too quickly. So if I get the opportunity to go fishing with some cool people, I'm going to take it. I've only got 2 days on the river, but I've headed from Devon all the way up to Scotland. I'm not going to name the river where we're fishing, but it's been a long drive, and we're going to learn a little bit about the river with my guest today. We're going to do some fishing, and we're going to see how we get on. Are we going to find an elusive spring salmon? The clock's against me. Like I say, I haven't got very long, but we're going to give it a really, really good go. My name's Pete Tigers. This is the Fly Culture Podcast. So I'm thrilled to catch up again with former podcast guest Colin McLeod and Marcus Benham from Nam Rods. What's the game plan for today? What we're going to be doing? You've been setting up. You've got an excited dog, Kip, with us as well. She gets the feel. I think my excitement's rubbing off onto her a little bit. What are we doing? You've been setting up the rods. What are we doing, and what's the plan?
So we are looking for a springer on a Highland river, no mean feat. And it's April. It's kind of the peak of the spring run now, just getting into the good part. But it's really cold, and it has been really cold all spring. So we'll give it a bash. We just set up. It's not a big river, but we use little double handers because these Highland rivers, you need to sort of hold the flies in pockets, and you need to kind of fish these little falls pools, and it's not just like swing it and kind of like you would on a bigger river. You need to work it a little bit, so we use a little double hander because it helps with that. And nothing fancy, full floating line. Even though it's only about 4 degrees, it's full floating line, 5 foot tip, and a wee fly. So yeah,
fantastic, Marcus. These must be completely different rivers to what you're used to in Scandinavia.
Yeah, it is. So that's why I use Willy gun to start with this morning, because I don't have a clue really what the taste or what the fish wants to bite on. Yeah. So why do crazy stuff when it can go safe and use a Willy gun? I love it. It's quite similar actually to the fishing I in Iceland, I would say. This floating line fishing and it's not about the long cast, it's more about the presentation and I love it. Tricky fishing, but it's lots of fun.
And does this count as a bit of product testing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have rods up to 18 foot, and that would definitely be way too big here. But I enjoy the full spectrum down to actually maybe fishing 9'5" weight for salmon fishing. So everything has its place, I would say. You just have to adapt your gear to the size of the river to make it more effective and more fun.
Absolutely. And Colin, what's the plan then? We're going to head down the river, fish a little bit, fish some pools. We're going to fish together, see how we get on.
Yeah, I fished this river a few times, so there are definitely a few hot spots. There's a couple of pools that the springers like to sit in, but also we've got one of the biggest tides of the year today, around about 9-10 o'clock. So hopefully we could have fish coming in all day. So the thing, you just need to keep going, just plug away and keep trying all the spots and keep trying all the pools, and hopefully there'll be a few new fish coming in off the tide. So yeah.
And you think the river's come up? There's been some rain overnight too.
There's been a little bit of rain, and there was actually a bit of snow on the hills, so there was maybe a wee bit of snow melt, which might have dropped the temperature of the water a little bit. But that won't do us any favour. That won't do us any harm either, because springers are hell bent on going away. They want to get up the river. They want to hide. They want to get as far as they can. It's totally different to grills. So if it cools a little bit in the water, it'll just slow them down a touch and give us a fighting chance. Yeah, it's like fishing for springers. You're always looking for like tiny little advantages to help you along, because they're tough to find. But like everyone always says, tough to find, but when you find them, usually they're pretty obliging. So Here's hoping.
And you've been here for the week as well. This is Friday morning that we're fishing. I'm just fishing the Friday and the Saturday, then heading back. How's the week been?
It's been okay. We have caught fish, but not many, and they're making us work for it. But we've had action. We've had a few fish. Yeah, but today's the day.
And the size of the river, as well, as the guys have mentioned, often when people, if they've come from trout to salmon, the size of the river, the tackle is not as familiar. Whereas here, it looks like Marcus has got something like a 10-foot, 9.5-foot rod set up. It's sort of more akin, really, to fishing spiders down and across on a trout stream. I'm looking at the pool in front of us, and it's probably only 30, 40 feet across, so it's not particularly big river. And for people thinking about salmon and picturing salmon fishing as we're talking about it, it's probably not quite what you're imagining. And I'll do my best to describe the pools as we fish them, but it's more, as a trout angler, I feel more confident, more comfortable here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the tips about how we'll fish these flies around, I guess, rocks and pots and holes, looking for perhaps an elusive springer, but perhaps not such an elusive one. So we're going to see how we get on. We're going to have a walk. Are we going up or downstream?
We're going to start at the top and work down.
It makes perfect sense. We're going to the top and we're going to fish our way down. Marcus is fishing the first pool with his 9.5-foot 7 rod. Colin said that he saw a fish flash in the head of the pool as well, and so he's covering that at the moment. I'm just sort of holding the rod that Colin passed me, and I noticed it was a 11.5-foot 6-weight short double hander, I guess.
Yeah, short double hander. Yeah, we even though the rivers are small and you can easily fish them with a single hander, but I think a lot of anglers up in the north of Scotland like a longer rod. I mean, I say the north of Scotland, anywhere north of Inverness when you're fishing little rivers, because we do a lot of little kind of techniques like dibbling when you fish a dropper and you want to hold it up in the fast water, or fishing a collie. And there's a technique, it's a kind of old-fashioned technique where you sort of roll the fly over and you do it on little rivers. So it's basically, you just want a little bit extra reach so you can hang the fly over where the fish are. But, it's really, the thing I love most about these rivers is that you can do whatever you want. You can fish wherever you want. But I like a short double. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And it's lovely watching Marcus work the water at the moment, as so many people involved in the industry, watching him cast the line effortlessly out over the water is deeply pleasing. We were going to walk upstream just a little bit, but there's a little hint of anticipation. I suppose for me, certainly it's the first moments on the river, so I'm excited, and Colin, having seen a fish or the flash of a fish as well, sort of sets things and sets the tone. The birds are singing. It was cold when we got here. The wind's eased a little bit. I take those all as positive signs at the moment. But of course, I'm not the one who decides these things. It's the fish that are going to make that ultimate decision. We've got the dog with us enjoying being out as well. And yeah, it's pretty special. I know in the messages that you sent that it was pretty cold up. You said it was pretty cold up, but it's not too bad, is it?
No, it's fine. You get out of that wind and you get a little bit of warmth in the air, and that's actually what we're looking for. It's like those moments when the wind drops and the air lifts a little bit. That's kind of when you're most likely to hook the fish, because the fish feel it too, So, well, that's a theory anyway.
Are you a big believer in the barometric pressure stories?
No, I'm not. I think it actually detracts people from fishing. I think maybe there's something in it, but it doesn't matter. I was gillying for a guy one time and he had a barometric watch on, and he actually said, "I'm going to stop now because it's not right pressure." And I was like, no, just fish. Well, I'm a geek, but when it comes up to a fishing trip, I'm like looking at the weather and looking at the heights and the rain and what's been caught. But when I'm here, I just go fishing, because these are the hands you're dealt. Go fish, and whatever happens, happens. Maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't. But yeah, I think thinking about things like that, it can ruin your day before you even start fishing,
There's something to be said for if your fly's in the water. And this is a supremely beautiful place. And as a creative person, I've mentioned before, listen to Colin's music, look up Colin MacLeod on Spotify or wherever it may be, and listen to his music. Places like this, does it inspire you creatively?
Yeah, definitely. I think it seeps in, though. It's not like an instantaneous thing. I think it's just like immersing yourself in it. This place, especially, like when you're really remote and really out there in the middle of nowhere, it does inspire me. But often not till after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah, there are moments that stay with you, or you take with you, and then stay with you sometime afterwards as well. So anticipation is high. Marcus has worked down the pool just a little bit. It looks like he's exactly on the money at the moment. So yeah, we'll keep you posted with how we're getting on. It's kind of sensory overload that I'm trying to take everything in, try and, in the brief time that I'm here, read as much of the water that I possibly can. Sometimes when it's like this, I play the averages and I think and hope where a fish might actually be. But in this case, I'm just sort of having Colin here as well, who knows the river, getting some hints, some tips how to fish the pools. He showed me a really cool trick of, in the heads of the pools in that fast water, just to, as the fly is swung round, just slowly take the rod upstream of me, sweep it upstream so it's almost in the roll casting position, then take it up a little bit further. He said that there was a fish, did lift off and have a look at my fly because he could see at one stage, and then again you think, right, is this my moment? Is this going to be when a fish and a salmon decides it's me? This is my chance. This is my opportunity. This is where it decides I've done everything right. So I feel from that point of view that I'm getting nearer. I'm taking in everything I possibly can. The scenery is absolutely stunning, and Colin's snapping some photographs right now as well. There's a dark clouds against the blue sky. There's water dropping down into pools. I often ask people when we talk on the podcast, particularly photographers, about the state of fishing and photography and how photogenic it is. And I think I'm in just such a photogenic spot right now. It just feels amazing. The temperature has come up a little bit. It just, you're probably listening to this, you'll know when you're on a river or on a lake or wherever it might be. You might be fishing for trout, salmon, sea trout, when things feel right to you. And right now it feels that way. I just am so excited. I've not touched a salmon. This is the end of April, getting towards the end of April, and I've not touched a salmon all of last year. I hooked one similar, it must have been May last year actually, that came off. That's as near as I've been. It doesn't mean that I haven't enjoyed every moment. And even this year, I've been on the river a lot, trying to catch a salmon or tempt a salmon in some way. And it doesn't stop me enjoying it anyway. It's just as good, just as exciting. And here, yeah, it just feels wonderful. Marcus and I are sitting watching Colin work down the pool. I was worried our friendship might be tested a little bit because he was being far too generous and not fishing. And I'm thrilled that he's picked up a rod and is working down a pool. But it gives me the chance to talk with Marcus a little bit. And he's been around fishing many, many years now. And last night we were talking about fishing, we were talking about lines, we were talking about so many things, and he's really in touch with fishing and tackle and understanding that. And I wanted to, Marcus, ask you a little bit about NAM, how that came about, and what the ethos of the company is, and what does NAM stand for as well? What does NAM mean?
Yeah, to start with the meaning of the word, it's from Iceland or ancient Nordic, and it means learning. So the ethos of the brand is kind of keep on learning, to be curious, and because the more you learn, you can't ever learn enough, really. And we have a saying from Sunray Suzuki. He says, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind there are few." And so to keep curious, and I've in fishing I've seen so many times the young people catching more fish than the older, more experienced fishermen, because they're kind of still curious and still open-minded to try new things. Lots of the more experienced people, they kind of set their mind on this is the way to do it, and this is the fly that usually works, and all that. But the young people, they and I mean, I'm getting old, so soon I'm there. So yeah, just keep on interested and in new stuff, and that goes out into the product really. That we do experiment, but still the stuff is kind of classic and easy to understand. I think not too strange. The why it's numb products is because in the beginning we had an idea that it should be more than only fishing. We actually had skateboards, and it could be anything, and then we could build in our kind of curiosity for learning new stuff and developing stuff into any type of product. I didn't know anything about skateboard, so it kind of ran out in the sand. But yeah, we became a rod brand. We have had some lines as well, and interested in fly reels, basically anything in fly fishing, or at least I'm interested in it. And I would say the difference might be how we develop stuff. Even if we're a really small brand, there's lots of hands involved, and we kind of learn together. When we develop rods, we get the samples, we try the samples like in a big group of people, and then obviously there's always something to fix, most of the time at least, and then we order new parts and we try them together, and then we learn, okay, if we change that part 2% there and 3% there, then this happens in the rod. So I would say that's the difference, and that's maybe how we can make on the total scale, kind of from 4 weights up to 12 weights, because I think at least that nobody is good at everything. So we try to listen to the people that do the most fishing, and I'm obviously into both trout and salmon fishing, but there's some other people that's into pike and things like that, and so we try to listen to them and let them try the samples before we launch the rods.
And was it an easy decision for you entering a marketplace that you knew well to say, right, okay, this is where I feel, and where you're going with this brand and the ideology of the brand, in the sense of not knowing it all, taps into how I feel about fishing and the enjoyment, the experience, everything else that goes with it. But was it an easy decision to make to launch a product and look into it?
Yeah, I mean, I was working for Guyline for 13 years before I started this, and that was the best school, and I got to learn so many good people in that company, and I had a bunch of friends already in the business, and I saw the good things and the bad things in the business, but I just love to travel, and I was curious how hard can it be. And I'm just learning on the way, I would say. Something isn't as I expected, but yeah, it's moving in the right direction, I think, in general.
That's great to hear, and I've used the trout rod, and I've talked about the trout rod on there, and I've been fishing a short two-hander, which I've enjoyed this morning. So the lineup sort of goes really from trout on, I would guess, Scandinavian rivers, the sort of 9'4" weights upwards, and then working along the salmon line. So you've got a good number of bases covered for the trout angler and the salmon angler too.
Yeah, I would say so. And as you say, we're pretty Scandinavian in our philosophy, how things work, but now we also have an American company, and I've been fishing a little bit of steelhead, and I see there's so many similarities. I thought there would have been bigger differences between the different types of fishing and the styles and what rods and lines and what people prefer and flies and all of it. But it seems to be quite similar, more similar than I was expected actually. And I just love it over there and to fish the steelhead. New experience for me. 2 years ago I started that, and now I just miss it all the time to go back and fish steelhead. But in the spring, to catch a springer and to catch a freshly run sea light salmon, it still is. It's where my heart is really. Yeah.
And having got to know you a little bit overnight, and this morning we talked a long time over breakfast, that fishing flows through your brains. You're not a bean counter. You're in it for the fishing as well, and to provide a product that you enjoy fishing with, your teams enjoy fishing with, and ultimately the end user as well. It is about that experience for you. That's really important to you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We say that our product should be understandable, and obviously each rod we do it a little bit differently. We don't develop a rod series. We develop each rod individually and put a lot of time into each rod instead of making just a big series where one or two are really good and the other ones don't get any time. So we do it a little bit differently on that as well. So we don't have that many products as other brands do. So we can spend more time on each item, and then that's nice.
And I'm getting the sense that it's something that you're not looking to continually make an evolution of each range. You want to make the best product that you possibly can and allow that to sit there in the marketplace rather than putting people under, right, there's a new rod this year, there's a new rod the year after. I got the sense that's not what your plan is.
No, to just change color doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've been a fly fishing nerd since I was a little child and started fly fishing 1995. And the evolution isn't that huge, I would say, on products. Maybe the biggest evolution is the large arbor fly reel, and obviously graphite rods. But it's just small tweaks you can do here and there. So there's no point in making new models if you already have the good stuff. You just sit still in the boat and trust in the products you have.
And I guess that plays into your hands, like you say, with graphite rods. We're seeing slight subtle changes in resins, for example, but they've almost been taken in the certainly short, possibly to medium term, as far as they possibly can. So that sort of plays into your ethos as well, isn't it? That you're putting that rod out that you're extremely happy with, and there's no need to change it, and there isn't going to be a significant advancement that's going to make you need to do that anyway, is there?
No, if something happens on material, obviously we will be interested in that and follow, but I don't see any huge things coming. I believe that we will keep on fishing with graphite rods and until something else comes. But hopefully we can just keep the rods we have for a long time so that people feel that they don't have to run out to the retailers and get the new rod with a new color. That's at least our goal, to stay calm and don't do crazy stuff.
I like the sound of that. And you're probably got the sense of the podcast that I did with Colin when he told me he'd taken over the distribution or started the distribution for NAM products in the UK, that it fascinated me. And I love companies that are a little bit different. And when I took a rod out, when I took the single-handed trout rod out, Jan was asking me about it and they're interested in it. And what's really important to me about these conversations that I'm having, and the one I've just had with Marcus, is that you get to know the person behind the brand. And I used the term bean counter just a few moments ago, and he's certainly not one of those. And hearing him speak about the places he's fished, how he's played with fly lines over the years, that you can sense he's just like we are. And I love the ethos of not having to rush product to market. Believing in a product is really important to me, and I think that speaks volumes that he's prepared to put that product out and thinks that will stand the test of time. So there's great testament to that. I should also say that when I was invited up here, I wasn't invited to do a podcast. I brought this independently and thought it might be interesting to talk to the guys, and then I got speaking to Marcus, and it's just such a fascinating story. And I want to, as I've always said, I want to shout about people who are pushing the envelope, looking at things from a slightly different angle, and that has to be applauded. So I hope you'll go and search out NAM products and have a look. And as I said, I don't get paid for this. I don't get kickbacks. I don't get anything. I do it because I want you to know about stuff that's a little bit different out there, and I want to shout about it. So I hope you'll excuse that, but you'll get the sense of the people behind the brand, and then you'll know it's not just the name NAM. You'll know who Marcus is as well and what fishing means to him too. So I thought I should mention that. Where can people find NAM products? What are your social media handles? What is the website details? Where can people find NAM products?
Well, it's namproducts.com. You can find us online. We're now reaching out to retailers in the UK and see if they're interested in carrying our products. So far, it's not many, and we have no rush. It will take its time, and the best way of getting in contact, I think, is by the river. So we love fishing public waters and meeting people by the rivers, and if we could get every possible customer out there and meet them firsthand, and let them to try the rods, that would be the best, instead of social media or ads or things like that. Just meet us by the river if possible. So fish public waters, that's what we're like to do.
I like that very, very much. And that sort of, again, speaks volumes about what Marcus and the brand are all about. And we were having a conversation about social media this morning. He said we're not chasing it. And as he said, we're not boosting, we're not advertising. It's very similar to what we're doing. And I think that's why I feel an affinity to them, because they're looking at things the way that we are at Fly Culture as well. And as I said, I can only applaud that. It's lovely. We're just sort of sitting here in the heather at the moment. There might be some ticks around, there may not. We've watched Colin fish down a pool. He was single spey casting absolutely beautifully from what I've seen so far. Are you feeling it, Marcus? Do you think we got a fish in us somewhere?
Yeah, the weather's heating up. So, yeah, I think there's a big chance today to hook a fish. If we can land it or not, we'll see.
My fingers remain tightly crossed. Got to admit to having my head turned. Colin, I'd sort of sat in the sun for a bit, just took everything in, looked at the river, and everything looked absolutely stunning. He'd sort of disappeared for a bit and then came back with a single-handed rod and had a sunray on the end. And, well, what happened next?
We rose a fish. It wasn't. Yeah, I was just I was thinking it's a little bit warmer, and around this time of year is when you might start to get a little bit of action on the surface flies. So, we tried it. It's good fun, isn't it?
I'm addicted to it now. And yeah, seeing those fish, and it wasn't sort of once that the fish came, it was at least twice, plus a small trout had a little bit of a look too, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny as well, you'd fish down, these pools are deceptive because they're shallow and you think there's nothing in them. And then all of a sudden you put something in that they want to play with and the place just comes alive.
And with sunrays as well, a lot of what I've read, and I've fished them a little bit, not with success, but a lot of people say that often what might could happen is that you'll get those sort of rises, but not the connection. What do you find that sort of ratio works out at if there was a willing fish there? Is it a tactic that you look to use and is effective for you, or does it tell you who's home?
It's a good way of catching fish. I think there's that thing about sunrays that it's a good way of finding fish, and it is. But I think most often than not, like everybody kind of considers sunrays to be big flies, but you get them in a variation of sizes, and if you get that sort of big boil at the fly and they kind of come right over it, but they don't touch it, sometimes if you just go down a size, or if you strip it faster, then they'll have it pretty confidently. I've not when they take a sunray, they take it really hard. I've not lost an awful lot of fish on sunrays, but sometimes you have to work a bit to get them to come back to it. Yeah.
And the interesting thing for me was watching how you manipulated the fly through the pool. And like you say, you mix things up, fast strip, and then even roly-poly. Do you tend to go faster to slightly slower or slower to faster?
I think probably slower to faster, really. I'd always fish it pretty quick to start with. I don't ever really fish it that slow. Yeah, fish it quick, and then if the fish are being a wee bit, if they're into it but they're not quite committing, then quicker and quicker. With sea trout, sometimes you can't get it to go fast enough.
That's it for day one. I fished on my own in the evening. It's about coming up 9:20, and I've fished, 6-7 pools. Really, really enjoyed it. The consensus was from the Gilly and from Colin too that the fishing switched off just after, I guess, where we'd had the interest in the sunray, fished high in the water. And that was about it for the rest of the day. We kept on, we fished hard, we fished long. We stopped for a quick bite to eat as well, which was a good thing to do because I think I'd have just fished otherwise. So it was good to sit down for 10 minutes and then get out and have another go. Marcus has gone home now, and we're going to be joined by a friend of the podcast and fly culture contributor, Lana Richardson. I'm going to sit down, probably have a glass of wine or something or other, and then recharge the batteries overnight, and then day 2 of my short trip, and we'll see how we get on. So it's day 2. We fished a pool each, and it feels good. I'm thrilled to be fishing with Lana Richardson this morning, as I mentioned last night. Lana, beautifully fished the first pool so far, and are you feeling it?
I am actually. It's the lowest I've seen the river this year so far. It's not that low, but I'm debating fishing smaller flies. I like to fish full float in the spring anyway, but yeah, certainly think I'm going to downsize the flies, but it's going to be helpful for us that there is less water in the river because there's still fish here and they'll still be running it, but they hopefully might be a little bit easier to find, is my thought anyway.
I like that. I like the sound of that. And how's the season been for you so far? Have you had some excitements on the river?
I have had a relatively relaxed spring actually. Usually I'd be out from January, February onwards, but I didn't actually get out for salmon until early March, which is pretty unheard of for me. I haven't had any success yet. I have had a couple of exciting moments actually. I lost 2 springers in 2 casts last week, and only to reel in my line and to find that my hook was missing the hook, so it had broken off, so that was not great. And I keep thinking to myself, perhaps after I lost the first fish, if I'd have reeled in and checked the hook, then I wouldn't have lost the second. So that was a good life lesson for me there. But you know, when you get a little bit excited and you just want to get straight back in, but I think next time I'll certainly just wait and check everything, relax, take a breath, and then get back in. But anyway.
That makes a lot of sense. I'd have done exactly the same. I'm sure listeners would have been likewise as well. And the story, I know you were telling me about it just recently, that it was a river that was thought of not to have much of a spring run, yet you went down, gave it a go, and despite the fish not sticking, you must have felt pretty happy and vindicated in your view too.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, as you say, it's a river that's not that known to have an early run, but all of the rivers around it do. So I thought, well, it would make sense that there are definitely a few early fish that enter the system. So to prove it to myself, not necessarily other people, but I just, out of sheer curiosity, I suppose, wanted to go and see, and fished a lot of cold, hours. And that particular time I went down, it was sleeting, and it was later on at night, and I felt pretty silly, but all of a sudden the magic started to happen. And that second fish that I hooked into, I know everybody says this when it's a fish they haven't landed, but I genuinely mean this from my heart. It is the biggest fish I have ever had on the end of my line, and it's it was a shame that nobody else was there to experience it with me, but actually just having that memory and being able to relive the story is pretty cool in itself. And then obviously, yeah, as you say, when I got back to the car, I was out of mobile signal, and I actually cried, which seems crazy. And I don't know if I was sad or if I was happy or if I had like just a total adrenaline rush. So I think it was probably a little bit of everything. But once I got back in signal, I phoned Colin and like screeched down the phone. Colin, who I'm pretty sure was in bed at this point, and his poor wife was probably thinking, what on earth is going on now? But yeah, you almost have to be that crazy about salmon to understand how I felt. It was just an unbelievable feeling.
Like that a lot, and again, I'd probably cry, I think, as well. If I think I'd cry if I hook one as well. So either way, it's amazing, isn't it, how emotive fishing can be to you. And I was playing something this morning from podcast guest Steve Duda, that something that he was reading that expressed his love of steelhead fishing, and that moved me to tears. I was almost, when I was playing that to you, I was almost in tears listening to it for about the fourth time. And it was an extraordinary piece of, he captures the essence of fishing so beautifully and on so many levels. But that's what it does to us. And I remember we were just driving down here and I said, do you ever get tired of this? And your enthusiasm and love for this runs incredibly deep as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a total way of life for me. And even on the days where I'm feeling a bit tired or I'm not that up to it, or, I just love sitting and watching others fish, or having a snooze on the riverbank, or even if you have a sort of long breakfast and a lazy morning and you fish, say, like a few hours for the whole day, I still just love the whole kind of lifestyle of fishing and being in and around the river with good people, as I am right now, Pete,
Colin will be here shortly, so you'll be fun. My biggest fear is that we get through, I did breakfast this morning, so my biggest fear is that we get through that unharmed. Yeah. So hopefully we will. So that'll be good news. Now, while I've got you, it's wonderful being able to fish with you and Colin to pick up some tips. And I was watching you, as I said, fish the first pool beautifully. You said about your fly choice, you said that you're not using a heavier tip or a weighted tip or just straight through leader. You're thinking about, when I came down and sat next to you, that you were looking through your fly wallet and that you were thinking about going smaller. What does that mean from you from a point of view about, I was watching how you were moving the fly through the water when you were fishing that first pool. Does that mean that you will still manipulate the fly? And if you do, how will you be doing that? And does the size of the fly actually affect how you're going to move that fly through the water?
So for me, it's not necessarily the size of the fly that would dictate how I move it. It would be the flow of water. And as the river's a bit lower today, the flow's a bit slower. So it's still swinging around nicely, but I get the impression that I just want to help it along a little bit. And being from the North Coast and primarily fishing North Coast rivers, you always want to move your fly. It's rare that you'd ever just let it swing. And it's quite funny because when I travel to different parts of the country and fish other rivers, gillies get very cross with me. They're like, "Don't touch it, just let it swing," and I'm always trying to twitch it or move it or do something to it. I mean, it's proved successful for me in the past. It's how I've caught most of my fish is from doing that, and it's almost a bit of a habit now. I subconsciously do it, so I'll probably always touch the line in some way, even if it's got a good swing in a big river. I'll always figure eight it or short strip it or whatever. But yeah, certainly on a day like today, even with a smaller fly, you want to be doing something to it, working it in some way. Yeah, so hopefully it will work. We'll see.
And conditions, like we were talking about, the sun is sort of obscured a little bit. The birds are singing. There was a big tide yesterday. Do you feel we got a chance?
Absolutely feel like we've got a chance. As you say, big tide, the temperature is lifting a little bit. It was cold last night, but I almost like that contrast in temperature. I like I think it was about 0 last night, and it's warming up to supposedly 10 degrees today. It feels about 6, 7 just now. So I think that's good. That should wake the fish up a bit. As you say, the birds are singing. Everything just sounds kind of happy and raring to go today. So hopefully the fish feel the same way. Yeah, it feels good. It feels good. And as I say, I like when the river's just a little bit thinner. The water's still nice and cool. There's still pots they can hold up in. But yeah, I think they're going to be easier to come across today for sure.
And you talked about feel, and I've talked about feel as well. And do you think when you're feeling that way, you probably fish better, more confidently, rather than the conditions aren't great or whatever? Do you think that plays into your psychological view and sense of how you're going to fish that day? Because I know we were talking this morning, and you said you'll fish differently. Every day is different from you from that point of view. Is that driven by the mindset of fishing rather than the conditions, or led by a bit of both?
I would say yes, the conditions definitely affect how I feel towards my fishing. And as I was saying, even though I've got the sort of fundamental knowledge of fly casting and different things like that, if I am not feeling the conditions, or if I'm freezing cold, or if I'm distracted, or it goes the same in the summer, if it's really warm, I'll kind of just fish really quickly through a pool. I won't really be thinking that much about what my fly is doing, cast, strip, cast, go, and I'll just rattle through it. And if I come across something, great, but I'm not really putting my heart into it. I'm still enjoying what I'm doing, obviously, but because in my heart I kind of know I'm probably not going to get a fish, you don't put 110% into it. Whereas on a day like today, I am super on it. Like every single cast, I'm thinking about, where my fly is landing, what it's doing, what it looks like underwater, how I'm going to present that, and where in the pools the fish are likely to be. So yeah, on days like today, I'm a lot more enthusiastic for sure.
In the segue I did last night, I mentioned that Colin felt the fishing had come off, and the gilly felt likewise, and it's another day. The conditions, like we say, feel different, and we've had a phone call from the gilly as well saying he's feeling it. Colin's pulled us over in a spot, and I'd love to get for many of us saying, I was talking to Lana earlier about feeling and the feel of the fishing or how you're fishing. Was that what you called yesterday, and you work as a gilly, so you're in tune with conditions and how things feel? What was the thing that was a pivotal point for you yesterday?
I think really it's the way that you feel when you're out fishing. I always think we're all kind of like stabbing in the dark. We don't know what salmon think, but you can you get accumulated knowledge of like a bit of experience, a bit of trial and error, and also just sort of, just kind of feelings. It's a weird thing to explain, but it's like if you're on the riverbank and you feel a bit sluggish and you feel a bit tired and you feel a bit hot and it's a bit, chances are I think the fish feel it too. They're in tune with the environment much more than we are. And then when you get that feeling in the day where you feel the airlift and you get a bit of energy and you feel a bit better, often that'll be when something happens. And I think, I mean, we talked about pressure, not, there probably is something to do with pressure and shift of the weather and changes and kind of temperature and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, like I was saying, you don't want to get too much into it. So when you're in the day and you're faced with conditions, you just fish. But you get that sense that, if it comes to the end of the day and everyone's a bit sluggish, but you feel it lifting, you're like, come on, guys, let's go and have another go. And then you never know, Or similarly, if it's in the middle of the afternoon and everyone's feeling a bit over it, you're like, well, let's just chill and let's just, And I think yesterday was a bit of a classic example of that. Something changed and it got a bit hot and, the sun was high and you could feel that sort of high pressure feeling. Plus, it's always good to have a really kind of comprehensive excuse when you don't catch a fish. You got to have something to blame. So that's what I'm blaming. It certainly can't be because we were not good enough. It's got to be an external factor.
That must be the Gilly in you talking a little bit there as well. And we followed a hunch, we pulled over, and you're following a hunch now. And what's your hunch with this?
This is kind of a little bit more like an experience thing. There's a little set of pools here that's sort of, I guess, maybe 4 miles up from the sea. And there's a little sort of, there's nothing really extra special about these pools. They have a little bit of depth. They've got a little riffles and things like all the others. But the fish just like to pull in here for a second. And this week, there's not been many fish hooked this week, but a majority of them have been hooked in these little pools here. So in order to sort of kind of double your chances, you just go, you have a quick go, you fish them through, you go and fish somewhere else, and you come back later and you fish them through again. Just sort of thinking that the fish are moving at the moment, they're coming in fresh, they're traveling, and the more times you hit the hot spots, the more likely you are to bump into one. Also fish all the water, of course, but you just, I think with fishing for springers is really different from the summer, because in the summer there's fish around and you fish the pools and you change tactics, and springers it's like you know a willy gun's going to work, a fresh fish is going to have it, and you just keep on hitting the hot spots, keep going, fish them again and again and again. Even you get in at night and you're having a beer and you're thinking, should I fish it one more time? Yes, you should. Just nip out and fish it. So, because it's always just little moments,
That makes perfect sense. And Colin's just getting into his waders now while we were talking. So we've just parked up and I've travelled in Lana's truck and listened to some country music. And we were just discussing about it, that many people who come on the podcast for our little road trip mix, again, I can never remember what I called the bloody thing, but it's on Spotify somewhere if you look at Fly Culture. But so many people have put country music on, and that was kind of fun listening to that too as well. And it fits with the feel of what we do as well. Country seems to work, doesn't it?
It does. I think country music fits in with fishing so well, especially up here in the Highlands. I think it really it goes together really well.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to that. And we were talking as well about fishing with people and how we like to fish and fishing with people for the first time. And I'm in the process of writing something and saying, it's sort of like an awkward first dance, isn't it? That you're saying, you fish here, how about you fish there? But it's a tricky one, and you quickly work out whether you've made a colossal error of judgment or things work out, isn't it? It's a difficult one. A fishing partner, a fishing friend, and you were saying how you and Colin have been on many trips together, and you sort of slip in to a easy rhythm. You know exactly what the rules are and how it's going to play out. It's a very difficult one to get right, isn't it? It's harder to get wrong, I think, sometimes, isn't it? Do you detect that too?
Yeah, and I think it's nice becoming that comfortable with somebody that you don't really need to be polite anymore. Like if I see a really nice pool, I'm not necessarily going to offer it to Colin. I'll just jump in. And Colin's a bit more polite than I am, but Colin would probably do the same thing as well. But then we're both, want to help each other. And I think the good thing about fishing with Colin as well is if he sees me fishing down a pool really terribly, he will tell me. He'll be like, "What is wrong with you?" Or "I think you should do that again," or which is good. I'm always annoyed with him to start with, but then I definitely thank him for it.
And I think one of the things as well is, I think the real test is if your fishing partner hooks a fish or you hook a fish, but it doesn't matter who's done that.
No.
You're equally as pleased for them. Is that something that you're not trying to kick it off at the net or anything like that when he's got one? I think that's the ultimate test, isn't it? That you're not feeling jealousy, you're not feeling, oh, that could have been me. Do you think that's a defining aspect too?
I wish you could see the way that Colin just glanced at me there. I would say that there's been times where Colin's hooked fish or times when I've hooked fish where I think both of us at times have probably gone, oh man, that's, but we definitely are 100% happy for each other. And we'll always have that bit of banter, I suppose, where you wind each other up or you pretend to be jealous. But yeah, I'm always chuffed to bits. And as I said earlier, sometimes I actually enjoy watching other people fish more than fishing myself. And yeah, it's always nice watching Colin catch fish. Maybe not so much when I've been trying all day or he's caught one behind me or whatever, but yeah, it's great.
Nice. Well, he's in his waders now, so we're going to walk down, see if the hunch plays off. The jungle drums have been beating. We passed the car heading downstream. The guy had helped his friend land a fish and sadly have fallen in doing it, so he was going back to change his clothes. These moments, though, make you focus a little bit more sharply. You might check your knots a little bit more before you fish the pool. You think about the cast, the drift. Everything changes just a little bit. The weather has changed. The rain's come in. The mountains you can just about make out. But it's looking pretty nice at the moment. The air feels, we keep talking about feel, and it feels thinner now. I don't know if that's a good thing, bad thing, or if we might get some higher pressure if this weather breaks. It looks as though it may do, but I don't know right now. But yeah, we're a little bit more focused. Colin's fishing a pool. He's the typical gilly that is letting us have the shots, and I've given him the rod because it's really important he has a go. It's his trip too, so they're both fishing some nice pools at the moment, and I'm going to have a quick go. I'm hoping my jacket's still waterproof at the moment, so it seems to be. I'm standing under a tree watching the guys fish the two pools. Colin's dog, Kip, is just working between the two of us. Perhaps she feels something as well, and perhaps there might be the chance that something could happen. The weather's come in a bit this afternoon. It got a little bit wet, and so we decided to head back to have something to eat, a cup of tea, something to eat, and go from there. We're back on the river again now. The plan is to fish long and hard, see if anyone's home, and fish till dark, basically. So, got a long session ahead of us. It's the last session. It would be lovely to see a fish, but it wouldn't make the trip. The trip for me has been made already with the people I've met, being able to fish with them. That has been an absolute pleasure. So yes, I'd be happy if somebody caught one, but it doesn't matter. This podcast has evolved into something more than a podcast about chasing springers in April. It's been much more than that, and for me at least, it's been all the better for it. Just looked at my watch and it's 5 o'clock. Still got some time left, but that was fun, hey?
Yeah, we got one. We got a springer. Found one. Yep. We've been searching. I think we've covered all the water and we finally found one.
And he's saying we, which is so kind of him, that it was Colin, his skill, the way that he was working the water. And we all have maintained the belief the whole time. It's never wavered at any stage, has it?
Yeah, always. I think it's the most important thing. It's, what would you call it, like blind faith. Just knowing and hoping that it's going to happen at some point. And I was lucky enough, I got a fish first thing on the Monday morning. I've been fishing all week. And now it's 5 o'clock on Saturday. Most people would be in the pub. Most people would have given up. But you just got to keep going because you never know.
And that was sea lice on there. That was just fresh off the tide, wasn't it?
Yeah, brand new in today, probably in on the last tide, just making her way up, and pretty angry as well. She wasn't that keen on stopping her journey. Yeah.
And I forgot in all the excitement that size. What do you reckon?
Oh, I don't know, 8-ish.
Yeah.
She was beautiful. I'm rubbish at weight, so I just don't bother anymore. It was a beautiful fish, and it was a good time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm the worst person to ask as well. So 8 sounds incredibly fair and incredibly modest to me as well. But it is these moments, and you feel emotional. I feel emotional having seen that fish take the fight and then it resting in Colin's hands before it went away again. And those moments are, these fish, the epic journey that they've made back again, and that brief connection, that bond that you have with that fish for that short time is pretty special and pretty unbreakable in some respects as well, isn't it?
I think that's what makes it so special. I think that's what makes... I'm addicted. I am definitely a salmon addict. I make no bones about it. And I probably spend more time than I should at it. But it is about that. It is that moment. And for me, like when we were standing there, you're standing beside me, it's that moment you see that silver flash and you feel it. And you're thinking, I've been fishing away and she's been swimming away and the flies come and she's come and she's gone, yeah, I'll have a go at that. It's like winning. It feels like winning the lottery. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And an absolutely beautiful fish. And I recorded a section earlier, which I may put in, I may not put out in. I didn't want it to sound, and it didn't sound like an excuse for not catching. And I talked about, it was meeting these people that was the amazing thing for me. Yet meeting this salmon very, very briefly as well, and seeing it was pretty special. We've got a few hours left still, so I guess we're going to move. We're not, as I said, we've not named the river, and we're not going to say the name of the pool or anything else, but the wonderful thing about it was that it's a pool I know Colin's not super keen on. Yeah. Things changing though on that.
Yeah, I might not skip it. No, yeah, I have been known to skip it, but actually we were up there. Pete has broke his fly off and very generously said, "You fish the pool, and I'll get a new leader on in a minute." And I nearly said when we were up there, I can't be bothered going down to fish it. But yeah, there we go, my new favourite pool.
Yeah, those things are signs, aren't they? That you've gone with that and said, right, we'll give it and you said, I'm going to fish the first 5 casts or so, and lo and behold, it happens. So, and those things are, on whatever level they are, they're pretty special, aren't they? And there must be something deep in there that made you do it. And of course, we wouldn't have known if there was a fish there if you didn't fish it, but you did and got the prize you so richly deserve. Fantastic work, my friend.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, it's always better shared. It's spring salmon fishing is a team sport, and it's always better shared.
Yeah. And that's the really nice thing about fishing with the guys on this trip, is that it's camaraderie, it's not competition. I'm probably as pleased, if not more pleased, than Colin. He's probably landed thousands of salmon over the years, but you can see and you can feel his excitement at that moment when it happened, and that release and we had a big hug when the fish swam away. And it's those things, it's everything that goes with it. It's, that fish has come as a result of a decision that he made, and it's just been wonderful to see that. And I'm almost speechless, and I'm struggling to get the words out, but to witness these magical moments for me is extremely, extremely special. And I feel lucky we do this. I really do feel that way. So that's it. We've had a fish. I think it's our first salmon on the podcast. It's been an amazing afternoon session. I haven't really said a great deal. It's coming up now 10 o'clock, so we've just rolled in and we're sitting down. We're having a drink, a glass of something before we eat something. We got brisket tonight. Colin has looked after us amazingly with the food, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So there's that to look forward to as well. It was a fascinating afternoon. The rain got heavier, and something I don't see where I'm based in the West Country is fish running, and they were running hard, really hard. And one of the pools that we were fishing, we watched them. The only description I can give is that they were almost fired out of a cannon, the speed that they were going through entering the pools and running up through them. So I'm guessing our chances were slightly more limited. But seeing them, for me, that was enough. And obviously seeing Colin's fish earlier was wonderful. There's a lovely little side note as well, that the gent that I mentioned earlier who caught the fish, that was his first ever salmon. So that's been a special day for a number of reasons as well. And I know Colin and Lana went and congratulated the gent as well. So I think they're probably opening something nice somewhere or other. So congratulations on that front. As the fish were running, there was a falls and they'd headed upstream a little bit further. I thought I'd lost Lana for a little while, and she appeared ninja-like, and it was a great call that they were running a falls, and she headed upstream, and suddenly saw her waving from the other bank, and she'd been looking up there to see if some of those fish had headed her way, so she went after those. But they were pretty cool, and that was a great call as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I headed up above the falls and walked probably about half a mile upstream, and the pools were still pretty thin up there, but everyone that I fished, I actually convinced myself I was going to hook something, and then I got to the bottom of it and I hadn't had a fish, and I thought, oh well, next pool. And it was great fun, and I hadn't actually that part of the river fished it from the other bank before, and there was a couple of pools that fished far nicer from that right hand bank. And then obviously ended up bumping into you, and it was quite cool to watch you fish the falls from up above you as well. That was really cool. But no fish for me this time, but maybe next time.
There's always the next time, and watching again you fish with such skill is an absolute pleasure. I think when you fish with people who have, watching both of you cast so naturally with that double hander, and watching the line go out, watching how you're reading the water, how you're fishing the water, those sorts of things, it helps you as an angler as well. And I think if you get the opportunity to fish with really skilled anglers, it helps you up your game as well. And you'll end up watching what they're doing and taking a little bit. And I was watching how they were working and manipulating the flies. And you like a fast fly, Lana, don't you?
I do like a fast fly. If I'm ever asked to swing it, I get really impatient, and it's a total habit. I can't stop moving. I think it almost keeps me concentrating more on what I'm doing as well, and keeps me focusing on the fly more. Whereas if I find myself just stood there swinging flies, my mind tends to drift away onto other things. So, yeah, it definitely keeps me engaged with what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to probably take that back. I've never enjoyed figure of eighting for whatever reason that is. So, yeah, fast fly. I think I'm buying into that. And Colin, seeing those fish, I know your dog Kip came down and I was talking to her, and then I heard your voice from up high, and that was pretty spectacular what you saw. There's a falls where we were fishing, and yeah, you saw some pretty cool sights, didn't you?
Yep, it's a bit of a temperature barrier, so there's always the kind of debate about, and that kind of, have they gone over, haven't they gone over, and you kind of talk about it and you wonder. But there was no wondering tonight. I saw this fish. It was big. I wouldn't want to say how big, but it made the falls look small. It was that big, and it just powered up over the top of it. I was like, well, that's the answer to the question: are they going up? But it's always, there's a lot of these Highland rivers have temperature barriers in them, and it's always that thing around this time of year: are they over or aren't they over? So yeah, but I've actually never been on a river at that point when the first fish start going over. So it was magic. It was really incredible. I didn't cast a rod tonight. I just stood there watching them. It was amazing.
I think for you, it's been just about a perfect day in that sense of seeing that seeing, catching a fish as well, and being able to experience it. And again, as we often talk about on here, it's a bigger picture thing, isn't it? And the fish has been amazing to see, but also everything else that we got to see, and that was pretty special, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we hadn't caught a fish today, it would have been a great day. But I think seeing them being, we were talking about it on the bank. You know, there's so many stars have to align to be on the river when things like that happen. And catching aside, it's great to catch, but seeing these fish return, come in the pool and start to jump up the falls, and you're there at that moment because you've been in tune and you've picked your days and you've waited, and that's the time you chose to be there, and you're there at the right time just to witness it. It's incredible. Yeah, it really is.
But for me, yeah, the opportunity to meet people that you kind of know virtually, and they're everything that you hope that they will be, they exceed that, and getting the chance to fish with them and they feel the same as you do about fishing is wonderful. And this is one of the wonderful things about our community, that when you get the chance to spend time with people in special, beautiful places, that it does drive home what a wonderful community that we actually have. So I would love to say a huge thank you to you both for looking after me so fantastically, putting up with me and keeping me in flies, food and wine and everything else. So it's been fabulous from that point of view. And you know, spending 2 days traveling from the bottom of the country to the top with the chance of not catching a fish, would I do it again? The answer to that is 100% yes. I loved where we fished. I've loved the company. It's been the company that's made the trip for me as well, that's made it so special, all that more special. The fish would have been a happy byproduct, but I got to see one. So I'm really, really happy about that. So yeah, this is what, for me, fishing is all about, and I've loved every second of it. I hope this comes across in this podcast. I would thank you so much for listening, and this is the end of this edition of the Fly Culture Podcast. There'll be another one coming very, very soon. Thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.